What happens when a little girl's voice becomes the only thing standing between her broken family and a lifetime of shame? In the dusty town of Japa, young Kyoma thought she was too small to be heard until the day she stood in court and turned fear into courage. But courage always comes at a cost, and one mistake could destroy everything. So grab your popcorn, sit back, and get ready for one of the most powerful stories you've ever heard. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button, turn on the notification bell to support more inspiring stories like this one. At the far edge of Japa town, where the paved roads gave way to narrow paths covered with dust, stood a shack that looked too fragile to hold life. Its zinc roof was eaten by rust, full of holes that whistled whenever the wind passed. The walls leaned dangerously, patched with old planks and pieces of cloth. Yet inside that broken shelter lived Kyoma, her mother Gozi, and her younger brother Abuka. Kyoma was only 9 years old, but hardship had carved wisdom into her young face. She had learned to be strong long before other children learned to tie their shoes. Hunger lived with them like an uninvited guest, yet she always found words to comfort her little brother. When Abuka cried from the pain of an empty stomach, she would hold him close and whisper, "Don't worry, Abuka. One day, we will eat like kings." Their mother Gozi carried the heaviest burden. Once a bright woman full of laughter, her face now bore the marks of endless struggle. Each day, she left before dawn, carrying a tray of vegetables to the market. She walked the streets barefoot, calling out to strangers, hoping they would buy enough to keep her family alive. But too often, she returned home with almost nothing. That night, Abuka had cried himself to sleep. His stomach growled so loudly that even Kyoma's soothing words could not silence it. She rocked him on the mat they shared, her own belly aching with hunger. Still, she stayed awake long after he closed his eyes, staring at the roof where moonlight crept through the cracks. Then she saw her mother sitting by the doorway. Gozi's shoulders shook silently, though no tears fell from her dry eyes. After a long heavy pause, she whispered to herself, "I just want to breathe." Before Kyoma could ask what she meant, Gozi rose slowly and slipped out into the night. The door creaked behind her, and the darkness swallowed her figure. Kyoma wanted to follow, but something in her chest told her to stay. She pulled Abuka closer, though her heart beat faster than a drum. She did not know it yet, but the path her mother had taken that night would change their lives forever. Gozi walked slowly through the empty streets of Japa, her head bowed low as if the weight of the whole world sat on her shoulders. The night was quiet, but inside her chest, a storm raged. Every step she took reminded her of the empty stomachs she had left behind in the shack, Abuka's weak cries, Kyoma's brave but trembling voice, and her own helpless silence. For years, Gozi had struggled to provide for her children. From sunrise to sunset she hawked vegetables, walking until her legs ached, yet life never seemed to reward her effort. The little she earned vanished quickly, swallowed by debts or by the unfair prices buyers forced upon her. She had sold her pride piece by piece until nothing was left. Tonight, her shame burned hotter than hunger. She stopped under an old mango tree and leaned against its rough trunk. Her heart pounded. She whispered into the darkness, "What kind of mother cannot feed her children? What kind of woman am I?" Her voice broke, and tears she had tried to hold back spilled freely. She pressed her palms against her face, ashamed of her own weakness. But then, the air shifted. A warm smell drifted toward her nose, the smell of bread. Her head lifted, and her eyes settled on a bakery stall at the corner. Oki, the bakery owner, had left several loaves cooling on a wooden tray. Their golden crusts glistened faintly in the moonlight, and the scent wrapped itself around her like a cruel temptation. Gozi's lips trembled. She thought of Abuka's voice asking, "Mama, will we eat tomorrow?" She thought of Kyoma pretending to be strong though her tiny body was just as hungry. Something inside her broke. She knew stealing was wrong. But what could be more wrong than watching her children waste away slowly? Her feet moved before her mind could stop them. Step by step, she crept toward the stall. Her heart raced like a drumbeat. She reached out, her hand shaking, and touched one loaf. It was still warm. Quickly, she lifted it and pressed it against her chest, whispering, "Forgive me, Lord, just this once." but she was not alone. "Thief! Thief!" a voice thundered. It was Oki, who had been watching from behind his window. His anger was like fire as he rushed outside, pointing at her. Within seconds, 2 night guards appeared. "Please, no," Cozy cried as rough hands grabbed her arms. "It's for my children. They are hungry, please, I beg you," but her pleas only echoed in the night. The guards twisted her wrists, dragging her through the streets. Neighbors peeked from their windows, some gasping, others whispering cruelly, "Shame, disgrace, stealing bread like a beggar," and as they pulled her away, the bread slipped from her arms and fell into the dust. Back at the shack, Kyoma sat awake, hugging her brother. She stared at the door, waiting for her mother's return. She didn't know that her world was already falling apart. The night air of Japa was cold as the guards dragged Gozi through the streets. Her cries of shame mixed with the rough commands of the men holding her. The bread she had tried to steal now lay forgotten in the dust, trampled by careless feet. People gathered at doorways and corners, whispering and pointing, their faces lit by the flickering glow of lanterns. "Is that not Gozi, the widow?" one woman asked. "Yes," another replied, her voice sharp. "She has finally shown her true colors. Stealing bread like a criminal, but she has children," someone else murmured softly. Yet pity was drowned by gossip, and gossip turned into mockery. Gozi wished the ground would open and swallow her whole. Each step felt heavier than the last as the guards pushed her toward the station. She imagined Kyoma and Abuka waking in the shack, searching for her. The thought made her heart break into pieces. At the police station, the smell of sweat and smoke filled the air. The small building was dimly lit, its cracked walls covered in scribbled notices and rusting chains. The officer at the desk barely looked up when the guards shoved Gozi forward. "Caught stealing bread," one of them announced. The officer raised his head, his eyes cold. "Another thief. Throw her in the cell. She will face the magistrate in the morning." "No, please," Gozi begged, her voice trembling. "I only wanted to feed my children. I have never stolen before, I swear." Her words fell like stones into a deep well, vanishing without an echo. The officer simply waved his hand. The guards dragged her again, unlocking a small iron gate. Inside, the cell smelled of dampness and despair. Shadows of other women loomed against the walls, their eyes hollow with suffering. Gozi collapsed on the floor, her knees weak, her spirit nearly broken. She pressed her face into her palms, whispering a prayer. "Lord, don't let my children suffer for my mistake. Protect Kyoma, protect Abuka." Back in the shack, Kyoma stirred. The night stretched long, her eyes heavy but her heart restless. She turned toward her brother, who whimpered in his sleep, and pulled him close. Still, her gaze lingered on the door. Something deep inside told her that her mother was in trouble. When dawn broke, Kyoma would wake to find her mother gone, and she would have to summon courage greater than her years to face the truth. The shack was silent except for the soft breathing of Abuka, who lay curled up beside his sister. Kyoma had not slept a wink. Her eyes, wide and restless, stayed fixed on the crooked door where her mother had slipped out hours earlier. Every creak of the wind outside, every rustle of leaves made her heart leap. She prayed silently, willing her mother to walk back through that door with food in her hands and hope in her eyes. But the night dragged on, heavy and merciless. Hunger twisted in her stomach, but it was nothing compared to the ache of worry gnawing at her chest. She tried to comfort herself by humming a lullaby, but the song trembled with fear and soon faded into silence. When Abuka whimpered, Kyoma pulled him close. She whispered, "It's okay, little one. Mama will come back." She promised she would never leave us. Her words were brave, but her voice shook with doubt. She stroked his hair until he drifted back into an easy sleep, his small body clinging to hers. The hours crept by. The moon sank lower in the sky, replaced by the pale light of approaching dawn. Kyoma's eyes burned from staying awake, yet her spirit refused to surrender. She remembered how her mother had whispered, "I just want to breathe," before leaving. What had she meant? Why had she sounded so broken? Questions swirled in Kyoma's young mind. What if Mama is hurt? What if she doesn't come back? She shook her head fiercely. No, she couldn't think that way. She had to believe, because if she lost hope, Abuka would have nothing to hold on to. Finally, when the first cock crowed in the distance, Kyoma made a decision. If her mother did not return by sunrise, she would go out and look for her. She was only 9, but the weight of her family now pressed firmly on her small shoulders. She couldn't sit and wait while her mother faced danger alone. As the first rays of morning sunlight slipped through the cracks in the roof, Kyoma's eyes filled with quiet determination. Whatever waited her outside the shack, she knew one thing for certain: she had to find Mama. The sun rose gently over Japa town, painting the sky with streaks of orange and gold. The streets were already alive with the noise of traders calling out their goods, children running with laughter, and cartwheels rattling against uneven roads. But inside the small shack at the edge of town, the morning carried no joy. Kyoma woke with Abuka clinging to her side. His eyes blinked open slowly, and the first thing he whispered was, "Mama." Kyoma's heart sank. She forced a smile and kissed his forehead. "Don't worry. I'll find her." Her voice was steady, but deep inside, she felt the weight of uncertainty. She had no idea where to begin, but doing nothing was not an option. She rose quietly, smoothing her worn dress, and guided Abuka to stay with their elderly neighbor, Mama Ifeoma, who often helped watch over them when Gozi was away at the market. "Be good, Abuka." "I will bring Mama home," Kyoma promised, though her chest tightened with doubt. Then she stepped out into the bustling streets. Her first stop was the market. She wove through the crowd, asking anyone who might have seen her mother. "Did you see Mama? She sells vegetables here," Kyoma asked a woman arranging baskets of tomatoes. The woman frowned, shook her head, and returned to her work. She asked another vendor, then another. Some shrugged, some ignored her, and a few whispered among themselves, their eyes heavy with pity. Kyoma didn't understand the looks, but she felt an ease settling deeper in her stomach. At last, a kind fruit seller sighed and leaned down to her. "Little one, your mother was taken away last night." Kyoma's heart stopped. "Taken where?" she demanded, her voice sharp with fear. "To the police," the woman whispered. "She tried to take bread. The guards caught her. I heard they will take her to court today." The world around Kyoma blurred. Her knees wobbled, but she clenched her fists and swallowed her tears. Mama had been arrested. For bread? It sounded like a nightmare. Without waiting, she turned and ran. Her bare feet pounded the dusty streets, heading toward the police station. She had no plan, no idea what she would say, but her heart knew only one truth: she could not abandon Mama. That morning, as traders shouted and coins clinked in the market, a 9-year-old girl ran through Japa town with courage bigger than her size, chasing a mother lost to shame and chains. The courthouse in Japa town stood tall, with wide stone pillars and heavy wooden doors that seemed too big for a little girl like Kyoma. She stopped at the bottom of the steps, breathing hard from running all the way from the market. Her chest ached, and her bare feet were dusty and bruised, but she didn't care. Somewhere inside that building, Mama was waiting. She climbed the steps slowly, clutching the thin rope belt around her waist as though it would give her courage. Men in long black robes and women with serious faces walked past her. Their voices low and filled with words she did not understand. Kyoma felt very small, almost invisible. When she finally squeezed inside, the sound of wooden benches scraping echoed in her ears. The courtroom smelled of ink, sweat, and old paper. At the front, a tall man with a wig sat on a raised chair of the judge. His face was stern, his eyes heavy with importance. Beside him, clerks flipped through documents, and a police officer stood watch. Then Kyoma's eyes found her. Mama sat in the middle, her hands tied loosely in front of her, her wrapper torn at the edges. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her face pale and tired. Yet when she spotted Kyoma, Her lips trembled into a faint smile. "Mama!" Kyoma cried out, forgetting where she was. She ran forward, but the police officer blocked her path with a firm hand. "No children pass this line," he said gruffly. Kyoma's heart pounded. She wanted to scream, to fight, but she remembered Mama's soft nod, telling her to be strong. So she stayed where she was, tears sliding down her cheeks. The judge cleared his throat, his voice booming. "This woman is accused of stealing bread from a stall. She has no money to pay. The law is clear." A murmur spread across the room. Some people whispered harshly about shame and disgrace, while others shook their heads sadly. Kyoma wanted to shout that Mama only stole because Abuka was hungry. She wanted to tell them how hard Mama worked, how kind she was. But the words stuck in her throat, locked behind fear. Finally, the judge leaned forward. "This case will continue tomorrow. Until then, the accused remains in custody." The gavel struck. The sound echoed like thunder in Kyoma's ears. Guards pulled Mama to her feet and began leading her away. "Mama!" Kyoma screamed again, reaching out. Mama turned her head, eyes glistening, and whispered just one word before disappearing through the door. "Courage." Kyoma stood frozen in the courtroom. Surrounded by strangers, her tiny fists clenched. She didn't know how. But she promised herself that she would not let Mama face this alone. When Kyoma stepped out of the courthouse, the bright sun stung her eyes. She wiped her tears quickly, but the ache in her chest remained. The marketplace was only a short walk away, yet today it felt like a long journey. As she moved through the busy streets, voices followed her, sharp as stones thrown at her back. "Did you hear? That quiet woman, Ifio, was caught stealing bread. A disgrace. Imagine a mother stealing like a common thief. They say her daughter was crying in court. Shame will finish that family." Kyoma lowered her head, clutching her arms tightly around her small body. Each word pierced her heart, but she kept walking. She had learned from Mama never to answer insults. "Silence can be stronger than anger," Mama always said. Still, it hurt not for herself, but for Mama, who was too kind to deserve such cruelty. By the time she reached the shack at the edge of town, Abuka was waiting at the doorway with wide, worried eyes. "Did you find Mama?" he asked, tugging at her dress. Kyoma knelt down, holding him close. "Yes, I saw her. But she's not home yet. The judge said they will bring her back tomorrow." Abuka sniffled. "Is she in trouble?" Kyoma's throat tightened, but she forced herself to smile. "No. She just needs us to be brave. We mustn't cry too much. We must wait." That night, the shack felt emptier than ever. The oil lamp flickered weakly, casting long shadows on the mud walls. Abuka fell asleep curled beside Kyoma, but sleep refused to come to her. She lay awake, staring at the roof, listening to the distant sounds of laughter and gossip outside. It seemed like all of Japa town was talking about them. She overheard neighbors whispering through the thin walls, "Who will want to marry a child from that kind of home? That family carries shame now." Kyoma shut her eyes tight, tears slipping down her cheeks. She wanted to shout that her mother was not a thief, that hunger was the real crime. But she had no voice in this world, not yet. As the night dragged on, she whispered to herself the one word Mama had left her with in court: courage. It became her prayer, her shield, her promise. The next morning, the streets of Japa bustled with life as usual. Traders called out their prices, children ran barefoot through the dust, and carts creaked under the weight of yams and firewood. But for Kyoma, the world felt heavy and gray. She held Abuka's hand tightly as they made their way toward the market, hoping to beg for scraps to fill their empty stomachs. Her eyes stayed low, fixed on the ground, as whispers once again followed them. "There go a few's children, poor things. Their mother is finished. Shame will cling to them forever." Kyoma squeezed Abuka's hand tighter. She wanted to walk faster, but his little legs could only move so quickly. Just then, a soft voice called out, "Child, come here." Kyoma turned, startled. A woman stood by a small stall filled with fruits and roasted ground nuts. She wasn't as loud or proud as the other traders. Instead, her eyes were kind, lined with years of hardship. Kyoma hesitated. Strangers rarely offered kindness in Japa town. The woman beckoned again, smiling gently. Don't be afraid. You and your brother look hungry. Come. Slowly, Kyoma approached with Abuka clinging to her side. The woman handed them each a small roasted plantain wrapped in leaves. Eat, she said simply. Kyoma blinked back tears as she took the food. Thank you, Ma, she whispered, her voice breaking. Abuka wasted no time biting into his share, his face lighting up with joy. The woman crouched so she was eye level with Kyoma. I know who you are. Everyone is talking, but I want you to hear me, child. Your mother is not wicked. Hunger can make even the best of us desperate. Do not carry shame for what she did. Kyoma's lips trembled. She wanted to believe those words, to let them sink deep into her heart. The woman placed a hand on her shoulder. Hold your head high. You will need strength for what is coming. Kyoma didn't fully understand, but she nodded, clutching Abuka's hand and the last of the plantain. For the first time since the rest, she felt a spark of hope, a reminder that not every heart in Japa was cruel. As she walked away, she whispered again Mama's word, but this time it felt stronger courage. The courthouse was busier than before. The air smelled of dust and sweat, and voices filled the room like restless birds. Kyoma sat on the hard wooden bench with Abuka beside her, his tiny hands clinging to her dress. Though he was too young to understand everything, he could sense the tension. His wide eyes darted around nervously, watching the guards and the people whispering. When Mama was led in, Kyoma's heart swelled and broke at the same time. Her mother's steps were slow, her face pale, but her back was still straight. She glanced toward her children, her tired eyes softening into love. The judge entered, and the courtroom fell silent. His voice was deep as he called the case again. Ifia, accused of theft, stands before this court for judgment. A clerk read the charges aloud. On the evening of the last market day, she was found in possession of bread not paid for. She admitted to taking it because she had no money. She claims it was for her children. The murmurs began. Some people scoffed loudly. Children are not an excuse for crime. If we excuse her, everyone will steal tomorrow. Kyoma's fists clenched. She wanted to scream that her mother had worked all her life honestly, that hunger was not wickedness. But she stayed silent, her lips trembling. Then something unexpected happened. A man with broad shoulders and a clean white shirt stood up from the crowd. He was a trader from another village, known for bringing in sacks of rice. His voice was calm but firm. My lord, I know this woman, he said. I have seen her at the market for years. She works hard, she cheats no one. If hunger pushed her to this, then it is the hunger that is guilty, not her. Gasps rippled across the room. The judge raised his hand for silence. He stared at the man for a long moment before replying, This is a court of law, not a place for pity. Still, your words are noted. Kyoma's heart pounded with a strange mix of fear and hope. Someone had spoken for Mama. Someone had dared to stand against the crowd. But the trial was far from over. The judge leaned forward, his face like stone. We will hear more tomorrow before passing judgment. Until then, she remains in custody. The gavel struck again. Guards pulled Mama away. Kyoma rose to her feet, her voice cracking, Mama? Courage. This time, Mama's smile was faint but proud. The days that followed were heavy with silence and emptiness. Without Mama's small income from selling vegetables, the shack at the edge of Japa grew colder and hungrier each night. Kyoma tried her best to keep Abuka fed. She begged for scraps in the market, sometimes washing bowls for traders in exchange for a handful of beans or a piece of yam peel. But many turned her away with harsh words. Go home, thief's daughter. You want to steal like your mother too. Each insult felt like a stone in her chest. But she remembered Mama's word courage and swallowed her pain. Abuka, too young to understand, tugged at her dress with teary eyes. Kyoma, I'm hungry, he whispered one night as his little stomach growled. Kyoma hugged him tightly. I know, just sleep, Abuka. Tomorrow, I'll find something. Her own stomach twisted painfully, but she dared not cry in front of him. That night, she dreamed of Mama cooking hot porridge, the steam filling the shack. Laughter echoing around them, but when she woke, there was only silence and the sound of Abuka's soft breathing. By the third day, Kyoma's legs were weak. She wandered the streets, Abuka clinging to her hand, her eyes searching desperately for help. That was when she saw the kind fruit seller again, the same woman who had given them roasted plantain before. The woman frowned at Kyoma's thin face and trembling hands. Without a word, she handed her a small basket of ground nuts. Sell these, child. Keep half of what you earn. Bring the basket back to me at sunset. Kyoma's heart swelled with gratitude. Thank you, Ma, she whispered, her voice breaking. She spent the whole day calling out softly, groundnuts for sale, fresh groundnuts. Some people ignored her, others muttered cruel things, but a few kind hands dropped coins into her palm. By evening, she returned the basket with trembling fingers, a few coins still tucked safely in her pocket. That night, for the first time since Mama's arrest, Abuka fell asleep with food in his stomach. Kyoma sat awake, staring at the flickering lamp. Hunger was cruel, but she would not let it destroy them. She was only 9, yet the weight of survival pressed on her shoulders. And as she whispered her nightly prayer, her small voice carried more strength than before courage. The third day of the trial brought even larger crowds to the courthouse. Word of Afia's case had spread far beyond Japa. Some came out of curiosity, others to mock, and a few to listen quietly. The benches were packed, and people even stood outside by the windows, straining to hear the proceedings. Kyoma and Abuka sat at the back. She held his hand firmly, whispering to him to stay quiet. Her small heart thumped loudly in her chest as Mama was led in again, her wrists bound but her head still high. The judge adjusted his wig and cleared his throat. His voice rang out deep and heavy. This court has listened to witnesses. The facts remain. The accused stole bread, and theft is a crime punishable by law. Gasps rippled across the room. Kyoma's nails dug into her palm. She wanted to shout. It was only bread, but fear held her tongue. The judge continued, his voice sharp as a blade. Yet, there are those who claim this woman is honest, driven only by hunger. The law does not excuse theft, but neither does it ignore mercy. If she is to be spared, someone must step forward to take responsibility for her debt. A low murmur swept through the courtroom. Some laughed. Others shook their heads. Who will take a thief's debt? Better she suffers so others will learn. The judge's eyes swept the crowd. If no one steps forward, she will be sentenced tomorrow. Kyoma's breath caught in her throat. Tomorrow. The word echoed in her head like thunder. She glanced at the man who had defended Mama earlier, the traitor with broad shoulders, but he kept his eyes low. No one moved. Tears burned Kyoma's eyes. She wanted to run to the front, to tell the judge she would pay Mama's debt somehow. But she had no money, only courage. The gavel struck once more. This court is adjourned until tomorrow. As Mama was led away, her eyes found Kyoma's. No words were spoken, but the message was clear. Mama was preparing herself for the worst. And for the first time, fear made Kyoma's courage tremble. That evening, Japa town was quieter than usual. The market had closed, traders packed their goods, and the streets emptied slowly. But inside the little shack at the edge of town, sleep did not come easily. Kyoma sat on the floor, her knees drawn to her chest, staring at the faint glow of the oil lamp. Abuka had fallen asleep beside her, his head resting on her lap, his soft breath steady. She smoothed his hair gently, but her mind was far away. Tomorrow. The judge's word echoed in her ears. Tomorrow Mama would be sentenced unless someone stepped forward. But who would? The town had already judged them guilty in their hearts. No one wanted to be tied to a family drowning in shame. Kyoma bit her lip hard, fighting tears. Then, slowly, an idea began to form in her young mind. It was a reckless thought, but it carried the weight of hope. She whispered to herself, "If no one will help Mama, then I will." Her eyes darted to the small pile of coins hidden in a cloth at the corner of the room. It wasn't much, barely enough to buy a loaf of bread, but it was something. Maybe if she went to the judge, maybe if she begged on her knees, he would listen. She imagined walking into the grand courtroom, standing before the stern judge, and saying, "I will pay for what Mama owes." Her little hands shook at the thought, but her heart burned with determination. As the night deepened, she crept outside quietly. The moonlight painted the dusty road silver. She stood under the open sky, whispering a prayer to the stars. "God, give me courage. Make the judge listen. Don't let them take Mama away." When she returned inside, she tucked the coins into a small cloth pouch and tied it tightly to her waist. She kissed Abuka's forehead gently and lay beside him. Sleep finally came, light and broken, filled with dreams of courtrooms and chains. By dawn, Kyoma's plan was clear. She would not stay silent anymore. Tomorrow, she would stand before everyone, even the judge, and speak. No matter how small she was, she would fight for Mama. The courthouse was more crowded than ever. Word had spread across Japa and neighboring villages today. Judgment would be passed on the woman who stole bread. People pressed into the courtroom, filling every bench, every corner, even spilling out the doors and windows. Kyoma walked in quietly, holding Abuka's hand, her pouch of coins tied firmly around her waist. Her small heart thumped like a drum, but her steps were steady. She remembered Mama's word of courage. When Mama was brought in, her face looked tired but calm, as though she had already accepted her fate. She gave Kyoma and Abuka a faint smile, her eyes soft with love. Kyoma clenched her fists. "No. I won't let them take her." The judge struck his gavel, silencing the room. His voice was sharp. "This court has considered the matter. The accused is guilty of theft. Unless someone steps forward to pay for the stolen bread, she will face her sentence today." A heavy silence fell. All eyes shifted across the room. The traitor who once defended Mama remained seated, lips pressed tight. No one moved. The judge's gaze swept the crowd, his patience thin. "So, no one," he said coldly. That was when Kyoma's small voice rose, trembling but clear. I will pay." Gasps filled the room. Heads turned. A murmur ran through the crowd like rippling water. The judge's eyes narrowed. "Who spoke?" Kyoma stepped forward, dragging Abuka with her. Her tiny frame looked even smaller in the vast courtroom, but her chin lifted proudly. "I said I will pay. My Mama is not wicked. She only took bread because we were hungry. Please, let me pay." Laughter broke out among some of the people. "What can a child pay? She is only making noise. Foolish girl." But Kyoma ignored them. With trembling hands, she untied the pouch from her waist and held it up. The coins clinked softly. "This is all I have. It may not be much, but it is mine. Take it. Please, let my Mama go." For a moment, the room fell silent. The judge stared at her, his stern face unreadable. Then, slowly, he leaned forward, his voice deep and heavy. "Child, do you even understand what you are doing?" Kyoma's lips quivered, but she lifted her chin higher. "Yes, I am saving my Mama." The courtroom, so full of judgment and scorn, hushed completely. A child had spoken, and for the first time, even the judge seemed shaken. The silence in the courtroom felt like a storm held back. All eyes were fixed on the little girl standing bravely before the judge, her pouch of coins held tightly in her small hands. Even Abuka, clutching her dress, seemed to sense the weight of the moment. The judge's stern eyes studied Kyoma for a long while. Then he spoke, his voice slow and heavy. "Little one, the debt owed for the stolen bread is far greater than the coins you carry. Do you think this tiny sum can erase the crime?" Kyoma's lips trembled, but she forced the words out. "I don't know, my lord. But it is all I have. My Mama has always worked hard. She is not a thief. If she took bread, It was for us. Please, please don't take her away. The murmurs began again. Some scoffed. Children should not speak in court. Pitiful. But others shifted uneasily, their faces softening. The judge raised his hand, silencing them. He looked back at Kyoma, his tone gentler now. Do you understand, child, that mercy is not written in the law? If I free her without payment, others will come tomorrow with the same excuse. The law cannot bend for one, or it breaks for all. Kyoma's heart pounded. Tears burned her eyes, but she lifted her chin. Then let the punishment be mine too. If she must suffer, I will suffer with her. Because I am her daughter, gasps filled the room. The words hung in the air, sharp as fire. The judge's face shifted, the stern mask cracking, if only for a moment. He leaned back, silent, as if wrestling with his own thoughts. Finally, his gavel struck once, the sound echoing like thunder. This court declares, Ifia is guilty of theft. But his voice slowed, his eyes sweeping the crowd. Because of the courage of her child, who has spoken truth before us all, this court will grant mercy. The woman is free, but she must leave with her children immediately after today. The courtroom erupted in shock. Some cried out in anger, others sighed with relief. Kyoma fell to her knees, clutching the pouch of coins. Her tears flowed freely now, not from fear, but from overwhelming relief. She turned and saw Mama being unchained, her tired eyes shining with pride and love. The verdict had been spoken. They had won, but at a price. The crowd poured out of the courthouse in waves of whispers and gossip. Some shook their heads, muttering about weakness in the law, while others wiped their eyes quietly, moved by what they had witnessed. But Kyoma didn't hear any of it. She only saw Mama walking toward her, free at last. Mama, she cried, running forward. Abuka followed, stumbling on his tiny legs, his face bright with joy. Mama knelt and gathered both children into her arms. Her tears fell freely, but her smile was wide, trembling with pride. My Kyoma, she whispered, pressing her forehead against hers, you gave me courage today. More than I ever had. Kyoma clung to her tightly. I thought they would take you away forever. I was so afraid. Mama kissed her cheek gently. Fear is not weakness, my child. Courage is when you face fear anyway. And today, you showed the whole world what courage looks like. They left the courthouse hand in hand, their small figures moving against the sea of curious eyes. The walk back to their shack felt different now. The dust on the road no longer seemed so heavy, and the whispers that once pierced Kyoma's heart now sounded faint, almost powerless. When they reached home, the little shack still looked worn and broken, but it no longer felt empty. They sat together, sharing a piece of roasted yam given by the kind fruit seller who had waited for their return. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in gold and crimson, Mama spoke softly. Life will not suddenly be easy, my children. But today, we were given a second chance. We must live carefully, honestly, and bravely. Kyoma nodded, her small hand resting in Mama's. She understood now that the world could be cruel, but also that a voice, even a small one, could change everything. That night, as the stars blinked above Japa, Kyoma whispered her prayer once more, not out of fear, but with strength in her voice, courage. And for the first time since the nightmare began, hope settled over their little shack like a warm blanket, and the dawn had begun.
Subscribe for more content.